recorded or words to that effect. But just to note that the recording won't go anywhere for the sort of an immediate future, but yeah, Nora will, if she's happy with it, give us permission to put it onto the Foyle website for people to watch who weren't able to make it today. She would like to have questions at the end of the session rather than at the beginning, and you can put those questions verbally when the time comes, or you can put a question in the chat, and then I'll feed that into Nora once we start the Q&A session properly. So I think without further ado, I will pass over to Nora to take us forward from here. Thanks, Nora.
Okay, thanks, Lawrence. Well, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Lawrence and the Forum of Insurance Lawyers for the opportunity to join you all this afternoon. As Lawrence said, I am a director in the personal injury team at Harbins Mulholland, and I have worked as a forensic accountant for 25 years. So what I will cover today is meet the HM forensic team, a brief history of the discount rate, the current position, what we are doing now, the impact of the minus 1.5% discount rate with a few examples, and then other things which I think are important to consider, and then finishing off with any questions. So today I'm going to be talking about a lot of numbers and different discount rates, but I think using examples is the best way of showing the impact of the Northern Ireland minus 1.5% discount rate on financial loss claims. In my examples, for illustration, I'm going to compare our minus 1.5% rate with the England and Wales rate of minus 0.25% and the Scottish rate of minus 0.75%. So here is a picture of a very cheerful HM forensic team, some of whom you may come across if you're working with us. So the forensic team is led by our partner, Derval Beatty. In addition to myself, other members of the personal injury team are Wendy McGrath, Cherie Burns, Pamela Belshaw, James McCullough, and Courtney Jameson. We also have a HM criminal and commercial forensic team, which is led by my fellow director, Barry O'Donnell. Barry also heads up HM's insolvency team. Other members of our criminal and commercial team are Callum Coulter, James McCullough, and Courtney Jameson. So all 9 of our team are qualified and highly capable individuals with a broad range of commercial and advisory experience. Having such a large, experienced team means we have the capacity and capability to handle not just a large caseload or very urgent cases, but also extremely complex cases. The forensic team is also supported by other HM team members from the Audit and Accounts Department and tax experts when required. Now, 2023 marks the 25th anniversary of the establishment of Harbins Mulholland. We are approaching 5,000 forensic cases, the majority relating to personal injury work. In fact, we are averaging around 200 cases per annum. I think the numbers of instructions speaks volumes. So now I am going to briefly cover the history of the discount rate and how we have got to where we are today. For illustration, and what I think is very powerful, on the right-hand side of the slide, I have shown what the multipliers for a 20-year-old male and a 40-year-old female were each time the discount rate changed. So keep an eye on these numbers as the slides change. So in 1984, the rate, believe it or not, was 4.5%. You will note that the multipliers at 4.5% were 19.8 and 17.7. When I was preparing my presentation, I looked back at the first edition Ogden tables published in 1984. There were 6 tables in total, including 8 discount rates ranging from 1.5% to 5%, all positive numbers. In comparison, today, the 8th edition Ogden tables have 36 tables and include 13 discount rates ranging from minus 2.2% to 2.5%. So then in June 1998, the discount rate moved to 3.5% with a subsequent reduction to 2.5% in June 2001. Based on a discount rate of 2.5%, the multipliers at that time increased to 29.33 and 24.82. Then in March 2017, England and Wales reduced their rate to minus 0.75%, with Scotland following on fairly quickly. At that time, the Northern Ireland Assembly was suspended and the Northern Ireland discount rate remained at 2.5%. However, in anticipation that our rate would follow the rest of the UK, we began to prepare calculations at both the minus 0.75% and the minus 0.25%, as well as the 2.5% rate. The rate in England and Wales and Scotland was minus 0.75%, and the multipliers were 88.96 and 60.52. This compared to the 2.5% discount rate in Northern Ireland, with multipliers of 32.1 and 27.76. So as you can see, there was a massive difference between the different rates. So in September 2017, the Lord Chancellor made an announcement suggesting that if the rate was to be set at that stage using the new methodology, a range between 0% and 1% was indicated. At this point, we began to prepare calculations at 0%, 1%, plus the Northern Ireland rate of 2.5%. And at that time, in settlement discussions, we noted that the 1% rate was often adopted. Moving on then, in August 2019, after the review was completed, the rate in England and Wales changed to minus 0.25%, and following this announcement, Scotland announced that after their review that their rate would remain at minus 0.75%. So meanwhile, the Northern Ireland rate remained at 2.5%, and our calculations at this point included 3 discount rates. They were minus 0.25%, minus 0.75%, and 2.5%. You will note that based on the new rate of minus 0.25% in England and Wales, the multipliers were 73.56 and 52.64. They were still significantly higher than the 2.5% rate in Northern Ireland. So in February 2020, the Minister of Justice in Northern Ireland announced that they were going to commence a review of the discount rate, noting that if the Wells v Wells methodology was used, a minus 1.75% rate would be indicated. Quite a shock. At that point, our range of calculations were extended to include the minus 1.75% rate. Now, there was no column was included in the Ogden tables for this rate, and so what we did was estimate it using the midpoint of the minus 1.5% and the minus 2% columns. So after a further consultation in June 2020, the Department of Justice announced in October 2020 that they were not going to introduce the minus 1.75% rate, but were instead seeking to introduce legislation quickly to deliver a new legal framework for setting the discount rate. From this point, the minus 1.75% calculations were no longer included in our reports. So then in March 2021, the Damages Return on Investment Bill was introduced to the Assembly. On the 26th of March 2021, the Department of Justice indicated that from the 31st of May 2021, the Northern Ireland discount rate would change from 2.5% to an interim rate of minus 1.75%. That is a reduction of 4.25%. a massive increase as demonstrated in the figures on the right-hand side. The lifetime multiplier for a 20-year-old male increased, you ready for it, from 32.1 to 131.01. And for the female, it was 27.76, and it increased to 77.25 for the 40-year-old female. So in May 2021, the Ogden 8th edition tables were updated to include a minus 1.75% column. So unless instructed otherwise, our reports generally included calculations at this point based on minus 1.75%, minus 0.75%, and minus 0.25%. Sometimes solicitors or insurers wanted calculations at other discount rates, and on occasions, we prepared calculations over a wider range of alternative rates. I remember that at one time I was asked to prepare calculations based on 7 discount rates, ranging from minus 1.75% to minus 0.25% and various life expectancies. It involved so many spreadsheets. So then on the 22nd of March 2022, the Department of Justice confirmed that Northern Ireland discount rate to be minus 1.5%. You will see that the multipliers reduced marginally to 117.78 and 71.71. In August 2022, the Ogden 8th edition tables were updated to include a minus 1.5% column to reflect the situation in Northern Ireland. So in this table, I have summarised how the multipliers have increased over the last 39 years as the discount rate has reduced. So the discount rate in Northern Ireland remained at 2.5% for nearly 20 years, and the multipliers for the 20-year-old male and the 40-year-old female were 29.33 and 24.82 respectively in June 2001. Now today, based on the current discount rate of minus 1.5%, the multipliers are 117.78 and 71.71 respectively, an increase of 400% and 290%. It really is hard to believe the size of the numbers now. On this graph, I love graphs, I have illustrated how the multipliers for a 20-year-old male and a 40-year-old female in Northern Ireland have changed over the years. You will note the huge jump in 2021, especially the young 20-year-old male, when the interim minus 1.75% was introduced, and then the minor reduction to minus 1.5% in March 2022. So from the 22nd of March 2022, we are now using one rate, minus 1.5%. So after many years of having to prepare calculations at a number of discount rates with Scott schedules spread over many pages, quite often on A3 paper due to the sheer volume of the numbers, I must say it is great that we now only have one discount rate to consider. This has made things much simpler for us and has reduced the amount of calculations required and the time spent to prepare a report. So the rate will be reviewed on a regular basis to make sure it reflects any changes in market conditions. The next planned review will commence in July 2024. So in England and Wales, the Ministry of Justice is exploring the option of a dual multiple rate ahead of the review in July 24. So it is worth noting that the Republic of Ireland has a dual rate system with a plus 1.5% rate for future pecuniary loss and a plus 1% rate for future care costs. So it's striking that both of the ROI rates are positive compared to our minus 1.5%, a difference of 3% and 2.5% respectively. So we'll all be watching this space as July 2024 approaches. So What I've talked about so far is how we have arrived at the minus 1.5% discount rate in Northern Ireland. Now I will consider the impacts of the minus 1.5% rate on financial loss claims. As you all know, the lower the rate, the higher the compensation awarded and the greater cost to the insurers and the NHS. So for illustration, I have summarised the lifetime multipliers for males and females. The males on the left, the females on the right. And you'll see the age range from 20 up until age 90. So you will note the significant difference between the minus 1.5% rate and say the minus 0.25% rate. For example, for a 20-year-old male, the multiplier at minus 1.5% is 117.78, whereas it is 72.46 at minus 0.25. It is clear that the older the person, the less impact the minus 1.5% discount rate will have. So if you look at the multipliers for a 70 or 80-year-old, you can see this clearly. At age 80, the multiplier is 9.81 at minus 1.5% and 9.06 at minus 0.25%. So on the right-hand side, as I said, I have set out the lifetime multipliers for females at various ages. Again, you will note the significant differences between the minus 1.5% rate and, say, the minus 0.25% rate. You will also note that the lifetime multipliers for females are higher than the lifetime multipliers for males because life expectancy for females is generally higher than that for males. For example, at age 60, the multiplier for a male is 31.1, but it is higher for a female at 34.58. So now I'm going to demonstrate the impact of the minus 1.5% discount rate on a lifetime claim of, say, 100,000 per annum at various ages. Something simple. At age 20, the claim at minus 1.5% comes to just over 11.7 million. At minus 0.75%, it's around 8.7 million. And at minus 0.25%, it's around 7.22 million. This means the claim at minus 1.5% in Northern Ireland is 35% higher than the Scottish rate of minus 0.75% and 62.5% higher than the England and Wales rate. And what about a 40-year-old male? Well, the claim is at minus 1.5% is just over 6.6 million. It's 5.4 million at minus 0.75% and 4.7 million at minus 0.25%. Again, this means that our rate is 22.5% higher than the Scottish rate of minus 0.75% and 39.2% higher than the England and Wales rate. For a 60-year-old male, the claim at minus 1.5% is around 3.1 million. At minus 0.75%, it's around 2.75 million. And at minus 0.25%, it's around 2.6 million. This means the claim is 12.3% higher than the Scottish rate and 21% higher than the English and Wales rate of minus 0.25. What about a man at age 80? Well, you'll notice that the differential has reduced significantly, with the minus 1.5% at 981,000. It's 935,000 at minus 0.75% and 900,000 at minus 0.25%. This means that the claim is 4.9% higher than the Scottish rate and 8.3% higher than the England and Wales rate. So in the four examples, I assumed an ongoing loss of 100,000 per annum, and the calculations assume that the award is being dealt with via a lump sum and not a PPO. The four examples demonstrate that the younger the person, the greater the impact of the minus 1.5% discount rate. Based on an ongoing loss of 100,000 for a 20-year-old male, the loss is 11.7 million compared to just less than 1 million for an 80-year-old male. So just recently, I was working on a dependency claim and the plaintiff was a 91-year-old man at the date of death. It's the first time that I have worked as a forensic accountant that I've had to look up multipliers for this age. I think the best way to demonstrate how the minus 1.5% discount rate and how it's impacted on financial loss claims is by showing you some real examples. And these examples are based on actual cases that have settled. For example, loss of pension or prosthetic costs. So there are two types of pension schemes. There's the defined benefit pension schemes, which are government pension schemes, and examples are the NHS, or NILGOS, etc. Now, defined contribution pension schemes are, for example, a personal pension or people who enrolled in the auto-enrollment pension scheme. While there are fewer defined benefit pension schemes, most government employees, including NHS, police, civil service, fire service, teachers, etc., still benefit from these. Most private companies, including Royal Mail and BT, have closed their defined benefit schemes to new members, though many current employees will still benefit from these schemes at retirement. It is worth the while considering the government pension schemes in more detail, as these types of claims can be quite substantial, especially using a minus 1.5% discount rate. So up to the 31st of March 2015, these pensions were based on final year's pensionable pay at retirement and included an automatic lump sum. So from the 1st of April 2015, the career average revalued earnings schemes, more commonly known as care schemes, were introduced. These are defined benefit schemes which pay a pension based on the average of a member's pensionable earnings throughout their whole career and have no automatic lump sum. This area has been further complicated by the McLeod judgment, but that is a discussion for another day. Here, I have set out an example of how we calculate an NHS care pension. This is based on a member's service from the 1st of April 2015 up to the retirement at age 68. It is for a service of nearly 43 years. The contributions are revalued annually at CPI plus 1.5%. The multiplier takes account of CPI, but the additional 1.5% increase needs to be factored into the calculation. So these calculations can be very long if the person is young, as in this example, or shorter if the person is older, nearing retirement age. So in my first example, I'm going to consider the impact of the minus 1.5% discount rate on a care pension for a 28-year-old male student nurse. In this first scenario, because of the accident, the young man's nursing career was delayed by 3 years, and I assumed that his membership of the HSE Pension Scheme 2015 for Northern Ireland is therefore delayed by 3 years. In this example, a loss of care pension from age 68 arises based on a shortened career of 3 years, and the pension loss ranges from 109,000 at a discount rate of minus 1.5% to 56,000 at a discount rate of minus 0.25%. The loss based on a minus 1.5% rate is higher by 42% compared to minus 0.275% and 94% higher compared to the minus 0.25% rate. In this second scenario, I have assumed that the young man is not able to complete his nursing training and is now only able to find alternative employment at national living wage. In this example, I deducted the residual employer's pension contributions to 88 based on 3% of his national living wage earnings after taking into account the threshold. In the first scenario, the residual pension is based on the care pension and the loss ranges from 56,000 to 109,000. But in this second scenario, as the residual pension is based on the employer's pension contributions of 3%, you will note how the pension loss has increased significantly to 1.1 million at a minus 1.5% discount rate and 581,000 at a discount rate of minus 0.25%. So the difference between minus 1.5% and minus 0.75% is 340,000, which is a 42.8% increase. And the difference between minus 1.5 and minus 0.25 is 555,000, which is a 95.5% increase. These are huge numbers. Given the student is only 28 years of age, the minus 1.5% discount rate will have a significant impact on all of the lifetime heads of claim compared to the Scottish and England and Wales rates. In a case like this, in addition to the pension loss, there may also be a loss of earnings. In my example, the young male student was unable to return to work as a nurse, and therefore there may be other claims as well, such as a loss of services, maybe a care claim, or even equipment costs. You will note that the lifetime multipliers range from 94.97 based on a discount rate of minus 1.5%. At minus 0.75%, it's 73.17, and at minus 0.25%, it's 62.26. You can see the range. So what would happen then if the young man had not become a student nurse, but instead trained and became a qualified electrician in an employed capacity and was therefore not a member of the HSE pension scheme? In this situation, the loss of pension would be the loss of employers' pension contributions at 3% of earnings after threshold to age 68. So assuming the earnings were 30,000 per annum and the residual earnings were national living wage earnings of 19,500 per annum, the loss of pension ranges from nearly 12,000 in England and Wales compared to 15,500 in Northern Ireland. So here I have set out a summary of the pension loss in the three scenarios. In scenario 1, the care pension versus the care pension, it's a delay of 3 years. The loss ranges from 56,000 to 109,000. In scenario 2, the care pension versus the employer's pension, that's the case of a person acting as a nurse compared to the national wage earnings. The loss ranges from 581.5 thousand to 1.1 million. Then in scenario 3, the employer's pension versus the employer's pension, the loss ranges from nearly 12,000 to 15,500. You will note that in all scenarios where the discount rate is higher, for example, England and Wales, the pension loss is lower compared to the Northern Ireland minus 1.5% rate. You will also note that if someone was a member of a defined contribution pension scheme, for example, a nurse or a civil servant, and is no longer able to continue in their profession as a result of the accident, the pension loss is usually considerable, especially if the person is young. So in my second example, I'm going to consider the impact of the minus 1.5% rate on a care pension, but this time it's for a 61-year-old female civil servant who was a member of the Nilgus old scheme and 2015 care scheme, and whose normal retirement age would have been 67. In this example, the plaintiff was medically retired as a result of the accident. Given the lady was so close to normal retirement age, she received an enhanced ill health pension. So her pension was built up as though she had been in the scheme until her normal retirement at age 67. In this example, a small loss arises as the lady's uninjured pensionable earnings at the assumed trial date would have been higher than her pensionable earnings at the time of her medical retirement. So I'm now going to look at an example of the impact on a lifetime cost. So in this third example, I will consider the impact on prosthetic costs at various ages. The first scenario is a 24-year-old female requiring 2 limbs, one for everyday use and another one for use in water that doubles up as a spare. The loss ranges between 382,000 and 607,000. There is a 33% increase in the figures at -1.5% compared to -0.75% and a 59% increase compared to the -0.25% rate. The second scenario is a 40-year-old male, again requiring 2 limbs. The loss ranges from 260,000 to 359,000. There is a 22% increase in the figures at -1.5% compared to -0.75% and a 38% increase compared to -0.25%. So here I have set out a summary of the prosthetic costs in the 2 scenarios. You will note that the older the person, the lesser the impact of the change in discount rate. So if a claim for a prosthetic limb is appropriate, a detailed report from a prosthetic expert is required. Usually the expert will consider the cost of the prostheses over a 5-year cycle and will include the cost of the prosthetic, replacement sockets, liners and annual maintenance charges. The expert will also advise if additional limbs are required. What about lifetime claims in respect of a life-altering injury, for example, in a tetraplegic or a paraplegic case? In addition to the usual care claim, case management costs, equipment costs, vehicle costs, etc., more recently we are seeing additional heads of claim such as assistive technology costs, hydrotherapy pool costs, physiotherapy costs and physiotherapy equipment costs, and even dietitian costs. We are also seeing claims for motor home costs and music therapy costs. So a discount rate of -1.5% can have a significant impact on the financial loss in these types of claims, especially if the plaintiff is a child. For example, the lifetime multiplier for a 5-year-old male is, are you ready for this, 194.67, though this may be reduced to a reduction in life expectancy. In these types of cases, when acting for the defendant, it is helpful to receive a care report or physiotherapy report, etc., commenting on the plaintiff's reports. Otherwise, in our calculations, we end up leaving the claim as outstanding, subject to further medical guidance. So, as demonstrated in the examples, the main impact of the -1.5% discount rate is found in cases which involve young people, defined benefit pension schemes, and lifetime claims, for example, care, prosthetic costs, equipment costs, etc. So to further demonstrate the impact of the -1.5% discount rate, I'm going to look at other things to consider, such as life expectancy, PPOs, overtime claims, adding or saving £500 per annum, or smaller annual costs. Life expectancy. So life expectancy evidence is more critical than ever now. A life expectancy reduction with a current -1.5% discount rate can make a significant difference. So period or cohort life expectancy. Period life expectancies do not take account of future projected mortality rates, while cohort life expectancies do take account of this. Many doctors use period life tables, but Ogden tables are based on projected life expectancy or cohort tables. For example, the life expectancy for a 40-year-old male is, and if you use the period life tables, it's to age 80.7. Now using Ogden table 1 at 0%, it's to age 84.8. That is a difference of 4.1 years, which can have a significant impact on the financial loss based on a minus 1.5% discount rate. So how we calculate the multiplier will depend on the wording of the doctor's report. The Ogden tables are based on a reasonable estimate of the future mortality likely to be experienced by average members of the population alive today and are based on projected mortality rates for the UK as a whole. Now, the 8th edition tables are based on projected mortality rates derived from the past and projected period and cohort life tables 2018, which were published by the ONS in December 2019. So those of you who have looked at the Ogden tables in detail will have noted that there is a reduction in life expectancy between the 7th and 8th editions. This slide summarises the differences which reflect the downward revision of the projected mortality rates. It is also interesting to note that female life expectancy has reduced more than it has for males. So if you're asking a doctor to comment on a plaintiff's life expectancy, it may be useful to refer them to the 0% column of Table 1 or Table 2 of the Ogden tables as the normal life expectancy that will be assumed in the absence of evidence to the contrary. So depending on how the doctor assesses any reduction in life expectancy, different methods are used to calculate the appropriate multiplier. So if a doctor states that the life expectancy is reduced by, say, 5 or 10 years, the appropriate multiplier can be calculated by adding 5 or 10 years to the plaintiff's age at trial and looking up the appropriate multiplier for that age. Now, if the doctor concludes that the plaintiff is likely to live for a specific number of years, a different method is required. Now, prior to the event of negative discount rates, Table 36, previously Table 28, are generally referred to as term certain table, could be adopted. However, with the minus 1.5% discount rate, Table 36 is likely to result in a technically inaccurate multiplier as per paragraph 17 to the forward to the Ogden tables. At paragraph 17, we are referred back to the method set out in the 6th edition Ogden tables, whereby we look for the age in Table 1 or 2, for which the value of the multiplier at 0% is equal to the stated life expectancy. This age can then be used to get the relevant multipliers. This is known as the deemed age approach. So the current minus 1.5% discount rate may make PPOs less attractive for plaintiffs. Clearly, if life expectancy is uncertain, which can be the case, there are advantages of a PPO for both parties. But like the McLeod judgment, PPOs is an area for another day. We were involved quite some time ago in a PPO, and it was agreed by the medical experts that the plaintiff had a life expectancy of 3 or 4 years, something like that. A PPO was the agreed approach in this particular case. Now, the person is still living today. If he had received his compensation as an immediate lump sum, the money would have run out many years ago. Now, in another PPO, in a recent high-value case, life expectancy was agreed by the medical experts, but unfortunately, the plaintiff died before the case actually settled. Now, if the case had settled while the plaintiff was alive and the compensation was an immediate lump sum, it would have been a considerable overpayment by the insurer. Claim for overtime can have a significant impact when using a minus 1.5% discount rate. For example, in a recent case, The plaintiff was a young man, and the plaintiff's accountant had claimed a past and future loss of overtime up until retirement based on around 20% of his basic pay. Now, the plaintiff had only been working for the employer for a number of weeks prior to the accident and therefore had no pattern of overtime pre-accident. However, in this particular case, given the opportunity to work at the weekends was available and the plaintiff may have availed of it, I assumed in this case that he would have worked 50% of the overtime claimed by the plaintiff. So based on a discount rate of minus 1.5%, I reduced the loss of earnings pension claimed by around 100,000 at minus 0.75% or minus 0.25%, the impact would have been less. So just as a matter, on a side matter, in relation to overtime, it is also important to consider how the plaintiff is at, how old the plaintiff is at the date of the accident. For example, in a situation where a plaintiff was, say, 45 years of age at the time of the accident and worked considerable overtime pre-accident, there is no guarantee that he would have been fit to continue to work the pre-accident level of overtime until retirement at age, say, 68. So, as demonstrated previously, if there is a loss of overtime, if acting for the defendant, it is important to investigate this. And ideally, I would like to see the plaintiff's pre-accident earnings for a period of 3 years prior to the date of the accident. That is, copies of payslips, P60s or P14s, details of the plaintiff's employment days history from HMRC, or even a copy of the plaintiff's NIC records obtained from HMRC, a comparable or a replacement employee's earnings for a period of 3 years prior to the accident, and all earnings to date. I must stress, you must make sure that the comparable employee is a true comparable. And then finally, obtain clarification from the employer. Quite often, if the employer is the defendant, we are given the authority to contact them directly, which I must say is very useful. We can ask the questions that we need to ask and get the information promptly. So if a plaintiff has made a claim for overtime, this information should be requested as soon as possible. If you request the information much later on in the case, say, as a result of a forensic accountant being instructed, there is a risk that the information may no longer be available. For example, a company may have gone into liquidation, or the business no longer has the information as it is outside the 6 years period that they have to keep records. If we do get the information in a timely manner, we are able to consider the plaintiff's loss of overtime in detail, and we may actually find that the claim is reasonable. So given the impact of the minus 1.5% discount rate, it's certainly worth taking the time to investigate this area. So adding or saving £500 per annum on a multiplicand will have a significant impact when using a minus 1.5% discount rate. For example, for a 10-year-old female and using the lifetime multiplier, so at minus 0.25%, the multiplier is 88.9 and the claim is around 44,500. At minus 0.75%, the multiplier is 110.88 and the claim is around 55,500. And then at the Northern Ireland minus 1.5% rate, the multiplier is 159.25 and the claim is around 80,000. So the impact of the minus 1.5% discount rate is an increase of around 24,000 compared to a discount rate of minus 0.75, and an increase of around 35,000 compared to a discount rate of minus 0.25%. Smaller annual costs are also worth investigating given the impact of the minus 1.5% discount rate. For example, in claims such as travel costs, car adaptation costs, heating costs, and loss of services. A round sum of £500 per annum for additional travel costs equates to an additional 2,275 miles per annum based on a standard car. So I previously demonstrated the impact of adding £500 per annum to a claim. So consideration should be given as to whether the plaintiff will have these additional miles. And some thought could be given to saved miles as a result, say, of not working or being unlikely to work. So saving even 50% of the multiplicand in this example could reduce the claim by £40,000 at a minus 1.5% discount rate. So this afternoon, I have set out how we have got to the current minus 1.5% discount rate in Northern Ireland, and it certainly has been an eventful journey. I'm sure you would all agree with me. I have also demonstrated how the minus 1.5% discount rate has impacted on financial loss claims using various examples such as defined benefit contribution pensions and lifetime claims. I've also highlighted other things that are worth considering, including life expectancy, PPOs, overtime claims, adding or saving £500 per annum, and smaller annual costs. So I hope that you found the examples and comments helpful and that I have not bombarded you all with too many numbers and the word discount. So what will July 2024 bring? Will there be one rate in all jurisdictions, or will Northern Ireland have a completely different rate from what we have now? Or will there be a dual rate? Time will tell. And then just a final thought. If you ever need any assistance, for example, with reserves or even just to check a multiplier, you can contact any member of our personal injury team. So, any questions?
Thank you, Nora. That was a very, very detailed explanation of the problems caused by these very high or very low, depending on which way you look at it, discount rates. There's some really striking numbers in there, I have to say. That was a tour de force. Thank you very much for that. We've got time for questions. If anybody would like to put a question to Nora now, if you'd rather type it, there's a chat facility. Or if you'd rather just contact her directly at some other point, you can do that as well. Nora, you'll send these slides on to me, won't you? And
yes, I will indeed. Yes, and all our emails are there.
Yeah. Yeah. Has anybody got any questions they'd like to put now? Yes, Alistair. I'm not sure if you're speaking, Alistair, but your mic's on mute. Oh, actually, I can't actually see you.
Not anymore. It's not. Sorry about that, folks. Yeah, thanks, Lawrence, and thanks, Nora, for the presentation. Lots to think about and really useful to see just the effect even of those sort of small numbers being saved or added on. But just got a couple of comments, really, and observations. I think standing back from this, for me, the reason why the discount rate is so low in Northern Ireland is just an accident of the timing of the exercise. It was done probably at the most disadvantageous time for investment conditions, and the prescribed portfolio and the time horizons, etc., set out in the statute meant that the number was going to be horrendous. Whereas I think, this is just a personal view, that the policyholders probably expected it would land somewhere quite similar to Scotland, given that the model is virtually identical. So when we go to July 2024 or a little bit later, when the NI and Scottish exercises are being done in parallel, it seems to me that the investment conditions will be sampled at the same time. So the numbers will be a lot closer at that stage. If the benefit that we've seen in the economy, particularly in gilt yields, sustains until that period, then one would expect that those numbers would be a little more positive, and I don't necessarily mean they're going to end up being positive, but they'll be perhaps less negative than they are at the moment. And I would have thought, subject to caveats, a good deal closer together than they are at the moment. And that's, of course, ignoring what's going on in England and Wales, and deliberately so, because it's a separate issue.
Yeah. I know whenever the Department of Justice, when the interim rate was the -1.75, you know, to be honest, like I'm an accountant, I'm not an actuary or economist, but we in the office here, we thought it might have gone to -1% at the most. Like, we were really, really surprised that it went to -1.5%. So dear only knows what it's going to go to next year. But hopefully it'll maybe narrow, as you say, somewhere between the -1.5% and the -0.75%. But who knows? Who knows what the market conditions are going to be like in July 2024?
Yeah, indeed. If anybody knows the answers, just let us know, and then we'll.
Oh, definitely.
we'll know where to invest. Anybody else got a question for Nora? No? Okay. All right. Well, I'll get hold of these slides and I'll make sure they're distributed to everybody in our Northern Ireland audience. And we'll produce a write-up of this event again for anybody who was not been able to attend, or anybody who wasn't making copious notes as we went through it. So can I just say thank you again to Nora for the effort that you put into this. Obviously took a long time to work out all those examples and bring it all together. So it's a splendid job. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you.
And everybody else, please keep your eye open for future events. That's it. Thanks very much.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Nora. Thank you,
Thanks.
Lawrence. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Thank you.
Hey, everyone.
Thank you.